Hi, and welcome to episode 40 of the Breaking Bio podcast. I'm Morgan Jackson, a PhD student at the University of Guelph, Ontario, Canada. And today we've got another new guest, as well as a couple of hosts along with us. First, we'll get to our hosts.
I'm Heidi Smith. I'm a postdoc at the University of Texas at Austin.
I'm Stephen Hamlin, postdoc at the University of New South Wales in Sydney, Australia.
And today we're joined by Dr. Stephen Heap, who's an animal behavior postdoc from Finland. But he's actually from a university in Finland, but I just can't pronounce the university, so we'll leave it up to Stephen to tell us about it.
All right, well, I'll give my best try. It's the University of Jyväskylä in central Finland.
Sorry, the University of... what?
You should have made fun of it before. This is going to be trouble.
Yeah, have you even learned to spell it yet?
Yeah, I can spell it. It's got like the A's with the dots on it. Letters. So it's all going on.
Awesome. And so, before you got to Finland, Stephen, what did you work on? What makes you an animal behaviorist?
Well, I worked on my PhD. I guess was a bit of a mess, really. It's like just I basically just kept on trying to study like things that just fascinated me at the time. Like I originally was interested in, well, when I knew I wanted to do a PhD, so I was looking for things that I could study, and I just put on like a David Attenborough show to try and figure out like what would be the most interesting part. And there was like the stalk-eyed flies having their contest, and so that's pretty cool, like that contest stuff. So I read a couple of papers on that, and there was one on it was basically just about the proximity between individuals is a signal of honesty. And I thought, well, I didn't know how like this PhD thing worked. I basically just saw that paper and I thought, I'll approach some professors and see if they like this idea. And it was a dumb idea. Like, I mean, I didn't even have anything, to be honest. It's just like, I'm interested in doing a PhD and I read this paper and I think I could do something with that. And they're like, all right, we'll give you a shot. It's quite a big reason. I don't know why why they chose to do that. But yeah, so basically I just started researching signaling and stuff to start off with, and then I just kept on encountering topics like the ESS, which I found really interesting, and that kind of touches on like a whole range of sort of situations like territoriality and like it's like population dynamics and these kind of things. And I was just struggling to find out like what kind of studies I could actually do, what kind of experiments I could do. So I just made it up as I went along. One of my supervisors, Phil Byrne, he works on like toadlets. So I decided to do some experiments with the toadlets, did some stuff with like playback, and I tried like these experiments and they were complete failures. They didn't work out the way I was hoping to. And
like most of science.
Like most of science. And so I just had to kind of reinterpret everything and make things up, and that encouraged me to read more and come up with new ideas and figure out how to piece it all together. And pretty much every chapter of the thesis was like that. And then by the end, it was just like this collection of vaguely unrelated sort of topics, and I just had to lock myself away like 2 months or so before I had to hand it in and try and come up with a way to tie it all together, and I managed to do that.
You make it sound like it was a total crapshoot for your PhD, but you had some really good papers from it.
I pulled that off somehow. No one's read them yet, but I mean, I'm happy with some of the things. I think they were well written, at least.
That sounds like everything.
No one's familiar with it, yeah. But so it ended up being the topic was sampling the social environment in an uncertain world. So I was the theme that tied it together was that the environment is unpredictable and temporally variable, and animals need to be able to gather information in order to adapt to this, and they have behaviors that have adapted to the level of uncertainty in the environment. And I was concentrating on looking at what information they gather from the social systems around them. So it was in 3 parts in the end. The first part was on nest site selection in the toadlets. So that basically found that, well, this was my failed experiment, and how I reinterpreted it was basically that I did like a capture release with the toadlets, and I basically took them out of one patch and put them in another patch. And what I found was that they all returned back to the patch that they originally taken from, but went into new nest sites within that patch on the most part. So there was like a correlation between site fidelity and landscape scale, so the spatial scale. And the idea that came from that was that there's relationships between how predictable the environment is and the spatial scale that you're considering. So really big spatial scales, you need information from longer periods of time in order to be able to figure out what's going on there, whereas smaller spatial scales, they're predictable based on short-term information. So the animals are going to be responding differently based on that, and that was the idea behind that part. The second part was on the effect of landmarks in the environment and how that affects the establishment of territorial boundaries. So basically I just became interested in this idea that sometimes you have animals territorial animals, and if you have like a situation, say, one individual might be able to completely displace another in a given space. But if you put like just a line in the sand there, it doesn't have to be anything that blocks the animal in any way or interferes with it. It's just a feature of the environment that's there. They will use that as a boundary for their territory. And the question is, why would they do that when they could otherwise just take the whole territory for themselves? So I wrote a review on that and tried like an experiment with cichlid fish. And then the third part of the thesis was based on dyadic interactions. So there was an experiment with playback with the frogs and how they change their calling behavior as they learn about neighbors that they're interacting with. And another part was a theoretical model on information processing in contests. So basically, when an animal should use like self-assessment or mutual assessment processes in a contest.
So you got to work with all these cool animals.
Yes.
Now for your postdoc, you will be working with
people, with humans. So I'm starting a human project now.
No!
No, come on, you give humans a hard time, but they've got their upsides too, you know.
Yeah.
I don't see it personally, but perhaps we'll get back to the perks of working on people, because I know Steven's curious about it as well, I imagine. So you're saying you were doing some work on landmarks and how they define territories. So were you doing, like you said, you were working on cichlids. So how would you change landmarks for cichlids?
Well, I just used like tiles. I went to like the hardware store and just got little tiles that you'd use for like a driveway or something like that, and just put them inside the tank. And basically the experiment was just figuring out whether they can learn to associate the landmarks with the contests that they have, with fights that they have. Because one of the explanations for why animals would use a landmark for their boundary is that it helps, basically helps their cognitive processes to be able to associate an area with the interactions that they have in that area.
Where were you able to do your field work?
The field work was done in Jervis Bay in New South Wales. Which is really cool. Like, I love working on the frogs, you know, like you just go out at night time, hang out in the bush for a while, set up your experiment, and then just sit in the darkness for a few hours and just listen to the frogs calling. It's really nice.
You field biologist.
Go around every now and then, look for spiders or some like cool bugs and things, and poke at them with sticks and be like, that's cool.
I think that's your inner like safari Steve.
I got my safari hat now, which I like to wear in the field.
Yeah.
The safaris in the wastelands of Finland, I'm sure, are that's exciting.
Yeah. I'm looking forward. I went out like not long ago to help my friend put eagle rings. Like he climbs up the tree and puts metal rings around the young eagle's legs, and just I got the chance to walk around the forest a bit and get eaten alive by the mosquitoes. It's so irritating. But I did get to see a baby eagle and some goshawks and things, which made up for it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I told you there were only birds there.
Oh, there's so many. But I was promised a moose, but there's no moose. And I was promised a bear, and I didn't see a bear.
didn't know they had moose there.
They got stacks of moose. Like,
Yeah.
they look like lots of moose.
Well, perhaps next time you'll catch the moose and maybe the bear.
Maybe yeah.
Is there a
The
lot
bear
of
catch me.
moose research going on there?
I don't know. There's a lot of moose hunting. I know that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Can you get like a moose steak at a restaurant?
Yeah, you can. Moose steak, reindeer steak. But a lot of the people who hunt moose, they would keep the meat and then bring it in. So last time I was at the Midsummer Barbecue, they had moose heart and moose liver. It's kind of tasty.
Can you get like moose or reindeer clothing? I could see you in a reindeer vest.
Oh, I love the reindeer vest. How cool would that be?
Yeah, right? You totally wear that.
I could pull it off.
Sorry, I digressed a bit.
No, it's fine. It's interesting because you come. Are you originally from Australia, or did you go there for school?
No, I'm originally from Australia.
Oh, okay.
But I was raised there.
Yeah. So, what's it like going from literally one end of the world to the pretty much the polar opposite? Pardon the pun. Actually, don't pardon the pun. I'm happy at that one.
Well, it's actually really good because, I mean, part of the reason I got into science was the opportunity to travel around and work and live in different places, you know. And so I've been stuck in Australia for way too long, and it was finally like the dream is coming true, and I could move around and do something, live somewhere else and meet new people and see a different part of the world, you know. That's part of the reason I got into the game.
Okay, but yeah, you're from Melbourne, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So look, I'm not gonna lie to you. Having come from Canadian winter to Australian winter, Finland is gonna fucking kill you.
Yeah, and people keep on warning me about it. Like, I mean, if you've ever seen like Game of Thrones or read the books, like there's this phrase, "Winter is coming," and I hear that every single day of my life in Finland. I'm like saying, "Oh, how beautiful is this summer? This is really nice." And people are like, "Oh yeah, but you know, winter's coming. You're gonna change your tune then, you know." But I think I'm looking forward to it. I've never experienced winter before, so I think it'll be like good fun, you know.
I can only imagine you living in Winterfell now, like Game of Thrones.
Reindeer vest, he'll be.
You better get like an insulated reindeer vest.
Yeah.
He's just gonna have to crawl into a warm reindeer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Tauntaun style?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They smell bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know. I wasn't like, oh, they smell good. Give me some reindeer perfume. But I just didn't know they were no bad. I didn't. You guys didn't know that.
I could probably guess it, having been around, you know, other large mammals like that. But
what other large animals are you around, like a reindeer?
Well, like cows and horses and stuff like that. They don't exactly smell like flowers, so.
Yeah, but I love this idea of reindeer perfume. Can we launch a Breaking Bio perfume line? You know?
Yeah.
It'll go with the squid sperm facial line.
I told him he was gonna call it Dr. Ben's space cream.
That's awesome. So I guess it hasn't been too much of an adaptation yet because you are still in summer and now hiding out in the middle of Texas. So we'll have to check back with you once the winter comes up and you may have lost a toe or something.
Although it did take a while to adjust to the constant daylight.
Oh, that's right.
Do you sleep with an eye mask?
Sometimes. But I'm getting used to it now.
Just in time for it to go away for another
like
6
4
months.
o'clock in the morning.
Do you eat a lot of fish?
You know, surprisingly little amount of fish. I was expecting to get a lot of fish there and like pickled herring and stuff. I was like, oh, I'm not interested in trying these things, but they didn't eat too much. A bit of salmon here and there, but I think it's really like a Norwegian, like a Swedish thing to have like all the fish. They eat a lot of pizza and kebabs in Finland.
Pizza and kebabs?
Yeah.
That's pretty
So what is it about Norway and Finland and Sweden? Like, what the Scandinavians? They seem to be pulling in a lot of researchers and research money. Or am I just that?
Yeah, like I think that they just value education and research and stuff, and people like learning there and stuff. I guess it.
Not like the U.S.
This is totally my guess. I have not an authority on this at all, apart from the fact that I know that Finland is meant to have one of the best education systems. So I'm just guessing.
But as far as like behavioral ecology at the meetings, like Stephen, you're there as well apparently. But like those countries bring it. You know?
They do. Yeah. From the Netherlands.
Yeah. I was thinking about Tinbergen with the landmark studies. So tell us what you're going to be doing with humans.
So this is like a study on basically the evolution of cooperation is the direct focus of the research. But the big is it's kind of interesting. It's going to be fun to get into this. Is like multi-level selection theory. So there's the idea that cooperation has evolved basically hand in hand with conflict. So you have groups that are competing against each other in the environment, and cooperative behavior. If an individual's fitness is dependent enough on how well their group does in relation to other groups, in that sort of situation, then cooperative behavior can become adaptive, providing that the between-group competition component can outweigh the within-group competition component. So it's going to be interesting ideas. It's like a controversial topic, and there's like a lot of different ideas and different theories associated with it and things. It's going to be. I'm looking forward to getting into that and separating the science out from the dogma and all the fluff or whatever else, and just trying to bring it all together. It's going to be good.
Are you going to be? Go ahead. Sorry, Steve.
I was just going to say that is an absolutely massive literature.
Yeah, but I mean, one thing I like to read. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad because you're going to be reading for the next 5 years, like that.
I'm happy with that. As long as they pay me to do that, I mean, it's living the dream, right?
Yeah, he's serious.
Yeah, I'm not kidding. Yeah. As long as I can find field biologists to volunteer for and satisfy my
wildlife
tendencies to get outside.
So how will you, are you going to watch episodes of the Discovery Channel Naked and Afraid or like Big Brother? Or how will you measure these things?
Well, at the moment we're looking at, you've ever done like an economics experiment or something like that, where basically you get people in, they go on the computer and have like monopoly money that they can kind of play around with and decide how they want to spend it, whether they want to use it for themselves or whether they want to use it in cooperative endeavors and things. And so that's the main paradigm that we're using. But I think also, because I do have like this background in field biology and the things that we can do with animals when we study like these series, it's like you got to take these series out into the field and you got to be able to test it in natural conditions and see what happens there and make manipulations in the field. So I'm really interested in figuring out ways to do field experiments on humans.
With prisoners, you think?
With prisoners? No, not like that. I think with people who are unwilling.
With people who are not captive.
Who don't know. Okay. Maybe you can do like a lab experiment with the prisoners, just have like all the cells with the numbers on them and have the prisoners doing stuff. But I don't think that'll get through. I think I've heard some things about like prison experiments that didn't go well.
Well, what is the thing with like the news story with like the prisoner's dilemma when the prisoner's dilemma actual theory that they did this with prisoners and it's not true?
Really?
Yeah.
No, that's not exactly what happened. But
do tell, Stephen. Do tell.
Well, no, it's just actually it's one of the interesting things, and I'll be interested to see how I handle this, is because humans, they basically fuck up the theoretical models, right? They don't, behavioral economists have been struggling with this for 10, 15 years on how they don't do it right, basically. They cooperate much more than they should given the model's predictions, and they'll act out of spite in order to punish people they think aren't doing it properly, even if it hurts them. The findings of that paper, I only briefly looked at it, but it was basically that the prisoners in this case fell in line with what other humans do, which is not do it right.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that humans are not monotonous machines and have feelings and emotions and those things that complicate your statistics.
Well, your smart ass aside, what it actually says is that humans are operating on a different social level than just the plain vanilla predictions of the models.
Mm-hmm.
They're taking into account things like reputation and reciprocity and factoring that into a more complicated calculus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as much as I dislike humans, I mean,
What
human
is
research,
that? To be honest, like.
I think because it's so messy, and because we don't let natural selection act upon us. But there is that guy, what's his name, Jan or something? That guy who does the group behavior, the
that
movement.
was Jan.
Is he German or something?
Yeah.
You're thinking of Jens Krauss.
Yeah,
Yes.
Jens Krauss.
Who, I mean, that was
his brother Stephen Krauss.
for me to see a talk about humans and be really impressed. Like, that's saying a lot. But he had done all this stuff, looking at how they designed subway stations or movement of people, and they had a big auditorium. What was it? A bunch of people are moving in a circle.
Mm-hmm.
And if you had 100 people, how many people had to know the rule of, like, you move towards this box to get everyone to do it? So there's a lot of group behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And I think things like that are really amazing. And I understand
that's the collective decision-making stuff with
Yeah.
Kusin.
I mean, it's not something that I would be interested in doing, but I do find that interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't dislike human beings, okay? I mean, there are a lot of people that I prefer animals over them,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah. Because I think with animals, like, you get such a calming feeling. I've never entered a room full of people and felt calm.
And like with animals, like if one of them's behaving like an asshole, you're like, it's just doing its thing, that's its strategy. But if a human's behaving like an asshole, you're like, oh, this guy, I can't stand him.
Yeah, that guy's an asshole.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, even worse, like, we're prone to all sorts of influences in that. I did some behavioral economics stuff during my master's, and we were looking at priming effects, just manipulating how they played a game.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't Prisoner's Dilemma, it was a communication signaling game, but the same thing. I mean, you could change how the instructions were worded, and that would change how they performed,
Mm-hmm.
just to make them more aggressive or less aggressive.
But I think that makes it more exciting because there's so many questions about the humans, and it is so messy. Like, it really is. Like, from this conference, it's kind of like what behavioral ecology was like in its infancy. There's just like a lot of just so stories and kind of like experiments that aren't really getting at like the real questions, and the field is still developing. Like, we haven't really figured out what questions we need to be asking and how to go about addressing them. So, like, there's a lot of opportunity in studying humans as well.
Well, I'm interested to see what you're going to do, because I'm not going to lie. I think the whole MLS angle is just complete and utter bullshit. So I want to.
Wait, I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't know what the MLS angle is.
So multi-level selection.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and it could be. I mean, that's what's going to be fun about looking at it. Like, I'm coming from this as, like, really fresh. Like, I have no biases yet. So I'm really looking forward to, like, getting a handle on all of this.
Are there, are there certain populations that are more homogeneous that you would rather study? There seems to be, like, is there a cultural element to some of this stuff?
Massive amounts of cultural elements. Like, I mean, that's another one of the things that make humans both messy and interesting, is that they have this huge layer of culture upon all their behaviors and stuff. Like, natural selection has shaped our behavior, but, I mean, culture changes a lot faster than natural selection does, right? And so, yeah, I don't even know how to answer that question. Like, I haven't even touched upon the culture stuff yet, other than knowing that it's there.
Some of the, like, it's kind of weird back and forth. Sorry, Heidi, I keep.
No, go ahead.
But the cultural aspect, I mean, that's one of those areas in which you see both variation and universality. Like the neuroeconomic stuff on, say, ultimatum games, cross culture. Who did that? Fair, I think it was. But you go and you look at 30 or 40 different cultures across the world, and they're all playing the ultimatum game the same way.
Yeah.
And it's actually kind of astounding how uniform they were in that way.
Yeah, that's true. I think there was one good talk that I saw recently, and it was it reminded me a lot of the way that birds learn their song, how they have, like, this kind of genetically determined sort of readiness to learn a song, but they need, like, this experience and stuff to kind of finely tune it and adapt it to the environment and so forth. And there's, like, these experiments that were looking at how children, like infants, responded to certain social situations that they played out in front of them, and that tested like whether the infants were aware of kind of these cultural norms and so forth that we have, like how much people deserve to be punished, and which people should be punished and which shouldn't be punished, and when people should help each other and so forth. And the evidence seemed to suggest that kids have like these are infants, like very young children, and they have like a conception already of these norms before they've really started to learn them, you know. So it kind of gives like this cool like impression that there is some genetic perhaps component to these kind of cultural things, and then there's another level like that's placed on top of that. I don't know.
That's
Yeah.
I think I'm not nice enough to study people. I think I would like, set up mean things.
Oh,
I think I would mess with them.
yeah, you got to mess with them. This is
Yeah.
what I want to do. I want to take it out into the field and have like a bunch of people going around and try to see how they behave in like some sort of weird situation.
This is going to be like a YouTube video we're going to see in a year or so.
Yeah.
Researcher fought with people in the streets of Finland.
Yeah.
This is gonna be a news story. The Hunger Games Finland style goes on at University of Nunukchuk or whatever, and all hell is broken loose.
We're going to Stanford prison experiment all over again.
Yeah, I mean, those experiments are sad and awful, but first of all, how did anyone ever let that happen? Yeah.
It was the 70s.
Every time I cook has a question, I want to be like, the Stanford experiment, huh? You know, like, you guys let that go. Who's worried about the temperature of my salamanders now? Yeah. That must be, like, your ethics board. It must be crazy to get permission for
I think in Finland it's not as difficult as it is here. We're talking to someone at the conference, and he was like saying it's so hard to get like ethical approval for things in the States, basically because all the universities are covering their ass on anything that could go wrong, or not even things that could go wrong, but things that could be misconstrued or whatever. And in Finland, it's just people are a bit more laid back about it, as long as you're not hurting anyone.
I
love that
just
Finland is
imagine-
where you're going to do mad science.
Yeah. I just imagine you guys all at dinner being like, what can you do to your subject? And you're like, can you punch him in the face?
You know, this sounds like you're 2 steps away from having a volcano layer.
Yeah, exactly.
Sharks with freaking laser beams on their heads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What will we do to the subjects today?
So we're almost out of time, but perhaps one question that was probably longer than I should have left it. Why study cooperation and the evolution of cooperation in humans?
That's a good question. I think what it comes down to is that like cooperation like really lies at the heart of biological organization and so forth. You know, genes cooperate to form like chromosomes and so forth, and chromosomes cooperate to form cells, which form multicellular organisms, which go on to form groups and so on, mutualisms and so forth. And so cooperation really lies at the heart of explaining the complexity and organization of biological systems, and if we're going to understand that, we need to be able to understand cooperation. And also, as a species that owes its success to cooperation, I think we are just interested in it and admire it in some ways.
God,
It'd be cool
that
to
was really
study
good.
Sounds all surprised.
Just give me a moment. No, that was really good.
I'm pretty sure that's going to be the perk of the entire show now, so we might as well just round it up there. So where can people follow along as you perform the Hunger Games in Finland and learn all about cooperation between humans? Is there any way that they can follow along?
Well,
Website,
not yet,
social
but
media, or-
I've just been hearing lots of suggestions to start like a website and a blog and things. I mean, I'll keep you posted on that if it happens, but otherwise just keep your eyes on the journals.
Yeah.
We're aiming high. I think next we're going for like nature papers and stuff. So.
Anyways, thank you very much, Stephen, for joining us on this episode of Breaking Bio and telling us about some of your work and again about what it's like to live in Finland as an outsider. So it's interesting to hear these different stories. So thanks again, and everybody listening at home, hope you join us next week for a new episode of Breaking Bio. You can find us online at breakingbio.com or on Twitter at breakingbio. Thanks again, and hope you'll listen next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.